ote so ataba na shingi tene pige kongi tene pige rwachu sabuta ane pige thakbodde da yongomindus ine rwa pyoji le pembe ni pige chöchi sonrochi songcheni ani 조직이 되니 전주람 드마 도스제진 도시하기 어레 제산디 인도 단데 전주람지 rem버디 전주람지 드메 아니 제바 도시 차디 도스
So the subject of what we're going to go over this weekend are the gradual stages of enlightenment, the foundation of all good qualities. This text was written by Lama Tzong Khapa, Kybje Rinpoche, the great Lama Tzong Khapa. So the text deals with the gradual stages that the three kind of beings practice, the small scope being, the medium, and the great scope being. And the source for these teachings is a great Indian scholar that came from Nalanda University in India, and this and it was Dribankara. That was his name, and he was requested to write a text that showed the gradual path, stages to enlightenment, and the text was requested to be written not in a very long way, but rather in a very short and precise. So in this way he formed the text. So, with the three different scopes of beings. So if we look at the background of this text, the foundation of all good qualities, this text was written by great Lama Tzong Khapa, and the source of it is written by Atisha Dribankara, which is the lamp for the path to enlightenment. So Atisha himself didn't make these teachings up, but the source from the lamp to enlightenment was from Buddha Shakyamuni himself taught. There are many ways to refer to the Buddha in Tibetan. They're quite poetical ways, like the lion from the Sakya clan, the one who has got the unequaled one. But the Buddha himself is the one who taught these teachings. He taught 84,000 different teachings, which were composed in the were presented in the three turnings of the wheels of Dharma. The Buddha taught 84,000 different teachings, and they can be put in three different categories, which are like the three turnings of the wheels. So all these teachings are also divided into three baskets, or the three pitakas. So the first one is the Vinaya basket, which deals with morality. The second one is called the sutras, deals with the sutras, and the third one deals with knowledge. So we have these three baskets, and each one of the baskets has got a different subject. So the Vinaya basket has got deals with the training of morality. The second basket, which deals with the sutra, is the training of concentration, or samadhi in Hindi, and the third one, which deals with wisdom. So this is the training in wisdom. So if we look at the text that we're going to learn now, it is all based on the 84,000 different teachings of the Buddha, which were put in the three different baskets, and Atisha took these three baskets, and on them he wrote the Light to Enlightenment. And then Tzong Khapa took this text and wrote a commentary on it. So there are a few commentaries actually, and the commentary that we're going to learn this weekend is the foundation of all good qualities. Like we said, the Buddha taught 84,000 different teachings, and the teacher took these teachings and he put them into the gradual stages of enlightenment. And if we ask ourselves, what is the point of teaching all these 84,000 teachings? So we see that we acknowledge that that since beginningless time until now, in all our lives, we have been taking again and again rebirth with states of suffering, and these can sometimes be unbearable. And the source of all these different sufferings is the three poisonous afflictions, which are attachment, aversion, and ignorance. All these 84,000 teachings are meant to bring some mental balance and to serve as antidotes to these three different afflictions. So all these 84,000 teachings are divided into four groups. The 21,000 are an antidote to the attachment, 21,000 are an antidote to aversion, and 21,000 are to ignorance. And 21,000 teachings are meant to go for a kind of balance in the mental states of mind. In general, in a concise way, all these teachings are meant to be serve as antidotes to our afflictions, to our kleshas. They should be antidotes to our attachment, aversion, ignorance, and the other afflictions. So when we're looking at the meaning of the Dharma has got many meanings. One is like a religion or like a Buddhist tradition. So sometimes when we think about the meaning of the Dharma, we think that we need to have a kind of way of a fashion of clothing, a way of expression, of reciting mantras, things that we should recite, and we have some kind of an attitude which is active, and we have pride as to our tradition in comparison to other tradition. All these ideas which we develop in relation to what is the Dharma and what we should, these concepts of what we should do as Dharma practitioners, they do not tame our mind. And not only that, but they actually add afflictions. They make them more extreme. So if we think about what is the meaning, the true meaning of all the Dharma, it is taming the mind. It is diminishing all the afflictions. So the gradual stages of enlightenment, which is called Lamrim in Tibetan. In short, it's a tradition which of teachings which shows how to eradicate the afflictions and to tame the mind.
내마치 차비요레스 와 디스문타니 다 가르스는 나는 조조데 주세 가르스는 신비디데 제가 기준 차비요레스 와도지기 셀프는 맞으시게 나칸에 나와 있어 책을 말하고는 아니 나베는 지 나를 스타트는 디 주자자 차비요레스 자기 전에 주의가 보래 나도 나는 셀이 요즘 되는 때문에 있어 그와 또 동그랗게 되지 않겠어요. 그와 제가 이 디자인을 신비주의 이런 이거 상계 아니 너무나 무슨 소시아스
So this principle is taught in a verse which Buddha Shakyamuni from the Sakya clan has taught. Or the one who is unequaled. So the Buddha said, don't do any negative actions and perform virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely. These are the teachings of the Buddha. So this verse means that we shouldn't do any negative action and to tame the mind in a way that does not harm others and oneself. So when we think about the real meaning of practicing the Dharma, that is to tame the mind so that we eradicate completely attachment, aversion and ignorance, the negative state of mind. If this is not what we emphasize in our practice, even if we wear particular clothes and we say out of our mouths, we say, I am a Buddhist, I practice Buddhism, and we recite all kinds of mantras and prayers, if we do not pacify our mind, if we do not tame our mind, then we are not true practitioners of what the Buddha taught. Because the line says, subdue your mind, tame your mind thoroughly, completely. These are the teachings of the Buddha, is what it says.
아니 중국도 통로를 남기는 거, 기본 진다 통로를 남기는 거, 기본 실을 남기는 거, 제 기본 수를 남기는데 지금 탈퇴하고 시부지 하는 거, 치치는 거, 어디 간다에 기본 수는 쓰기잖아요. 지금 가서 규 탈대봐, 아니 내가 수를 그대치면 체, 가서 규칙 아니 로지하는 거 체, 뭐에 시중고, 뭐에 상부 따라 대치중고. 타마타마들이 기부 친구야. 지혜가 최고 아니 당연히 기부 친구야. 이게 제일 힘들지. 너무 위험하고. 근데 이거 가도 기부 친구 라는 직수야. 아니 내 기부 저기 그냥 이거 직수야. 아니 기부 친구 내 안에 다 타마들 기부 친구야. 지혜가 가서 간다에 가서 직 아니 상기를 이제 배워 치. 아니 기부 친구야 이제 봤어. 어디 됐습니다.
So when we deal with the gradual stages of enlightenment, usually we speak about three different practitioners. There's the practitioner with who is the small scope or the small ability, the middling ability and the great ability. So in general, we can think that we're speaking about three different beings, three different people. One is with the small ability, with little abilities, the other person with middling ability, and then the last one with a great ability. But this is not actually what we're referring to here with the gradual stages of enlightenment of the three scopes of being. Rather, what we're speaking about, or the way we're relating to it, is that the gradual stages of enlightenment are supposed to bring one individual practitioner through all the different stages to enlightenment until the last stage, the last product, which is enlightenment. So these are common. These stages are common for each one of the different scopes of being. So the second scope, the middling scope, has got the common stages of the first scope, the small scope, and the last one has got the common stages of the first and the second. And so eventually, it is one being that goes through the different stages. These are not separate. They are common for the one individual that starts from one place and gradually train their mind until they get to a place where they can train their mind with a great scope being. So we can say that when we look at the three different trainings, the training in morality, the training in concentration, and the training in wisdom. So the training in morality is the center point, the center practice of the small scope beings. While the training in concentration is the center point of practice for the middling capacity practitioner, while the training in wisdom is common for the small, middling, and the greater scope of beings. So we spoke about the three trainings. The first one is the training of morality, and this serves as a very, very important training. It is the basis, it's the foundation on which we train ourselves in concentration and in the training of wisdom. Without this basis, without this foundation, we cannot cannot train our mind in the other trainings. It is like when we want to build a building that has got a few stories or floors. First, we need to have a strong foundation, a basis. If we have a strong basis, a strong foundation, then we can add the different floors, the second and the third floor. We can make a house for living, or shops we can put on the second floors. So this all depends on having a strong foundation. If the basis is not stable, everything we build on top of it will also not be stable. Therefore, the training in morality is the basis for the second trainings of concentration and wisdom. Another way of showing the connection between the different trainings is like a wheel. It's like a wheel that has got the center, and then the different metal connections to the external wheel. The center is the concentration. It's just like the training in concentration, and the different connectors are the concentration, like the training in concentration, and the external wheel is similar to the training in wisdom. Without the connectors from the center to the external wheel, we will not be able to move. And the center, the training in morality is extremely important. It is essential, so we can train ourselves in wisdom and concentration. So we're starting with training in morality. The training in morality is the center point for the small capacity, the small scope being, which are common with us, the middling and the greater scope of beings. If we speak about it more literally, the first morality training which we do is refraining from the 10 non-virtues, the 3 non-virtues of the body, the 4 of the speech, and the 3 of the mind. So we should refrain from these 10 non-virtues. the physical non-virtues which we should refrain from are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. These are the three negative actions of the body. There's the four negative actions, the verbal negative actions which we should refrain, which is lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and meaningless talk, idle talk. So these are the four non-virtues of the speech, and the three non-virtues which we should avoid of the mind: covetousness, malice, and wrong view. Avoiding these 10 non-virtues in general is common to other religions as well. We could say that Buddhism has got a particular way of looking at the non-virtues, but in general, these the non-virtues, at least the physical and the oral ones, are common to other religions. Also, other religions see these as negative. So, in morality, this is like the basis that we start with. In the beginning of this course, Rinpoche wanted to give us a general subject of what the course is going to be about. So the subject of these teachings is going to be the gradual stages of enlightenment, and it is also meant to generate the correct motivation in our mind. What we're going to learn is the Buddha Dharma. In a more specific way, what we're going to study is the Mahayana, the great vehicle, and what is most important in the Mahayana is our motivation for doing an action. So our motivation should be that which doesn't have the 8 worldly dharma. What can we get out of the teachings for this life, like fame and money, any kind of gain, any kind of worldly motivation is inappropriate as a motivation for listening to the teachings which we'll hear in this weekend. So what is the motivation which we should have? So if in the best way, we should have the motivation to achieve enlightenment, the enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. When we think that we're gonna attain, we're gonna listen to the teachings, so that eventually I can become a Buddha, one that is omniscient, in order to bring all beings to that state. The middling motivation is for listening to the teaching is so that we can attain nirvana, liberation, and the least motivation is that which aspires to gain a higher rebirth by listening to these teachings. If we only think about this life, then this is not motivation, an appropriate motivation. It is not Dharma.
המוטיבציה שלנו בהקשבה לשיעורים האלה היא מוטיבציה נכונה. עוד איזה, תאבי, תאבורון דינגנה, תאבי ספורדסנה, תאבי 그게 쉬운 질문이야. 근데 그게 지금 교수는 자체지. 뭐? 네, 교수는 굉장히 비시 도스. 뭐? 어느 도스? 네, 아니 갖고 와. 아니 네, 아주 너 같이 와. 아니 네 샤트 왔어. 어떻게 손체? 아니 때는 가는 네 그렇지냐? 네, 아니 가지고 그래. 가 보니 여기 네디나 세주 정말 내는 루비네 그것도야기 이거요. 다 네디 지게 네 같이 그냥 셔도에 디나리아 로지 근데 지금 당하지 말고 얘기 좋다. 아니 네디 정말 제지 아니 네디다 갖고 가다는 셔도에 있는 자원들이 디나리아 가지고 그랬어요. 세주 로마데 가르 하는 거 이네 아니 돌아요. 그거 요즘에 제가 아주 그거 지금 이제 쪼까지 그냥 자연에 가서 야 울루기 사야가 해도 거 어디나시 이제 뭐인가 이제 기타 그냥 쳐야지 어떻게 그것도
So when we set our motivation, we need our mind to be useful, to be serviceable for the teachings. And the way to get this attitude is to not to have the three faults of a vessel. So, but rather that we have the six favorable considerations. So the three faults of a vessel are the faults of being like a vessel which is turned upside down, so we shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't have the fault of being like a dirty vessel, and we shouldn't have the fault of being like a vessel which has a leaky bottom. And if the vessel is upside down, then anything which is put into the vessel will just spill out in the vessel which has got like a leaky bottom. Anything we put will just it won't be able to contain it. And the last fault is that the vessel which has some kind of dirt in it, anything which we put inside will also be contaminated with the food or drink which we put into the vessel. So these three faults of a vessel are just like the three attitudes which we should not have while listening to the Dharma teachings. The upside down, the leaky bottom, and the dirty vessel.
다 다음에 이때 그냥 제대로 이제 보세요. 제대로 이제 보면 뭐 아주 네 제대로 작성을 해. 제대로 맞지. 다 그것이 이때 제대로 이제 지내면 우리는 그게 이해라서 뭐 레벨스나베 온체에 있는 한 컨디션을 최소 모르지 최 이것을 비교해 같이 보는 What's the day in the day?
So we wish to be clean from these three faults of the vessel, and what the vessel shows is that if we don't have a way of listening which is like an upside down vessel, this is because we do not pay attention to the teaching. So what we want to do is to pay attention, to be concentrated, and the second thing, which is like being free of having the fault of being like an upside down, a vessel which has a leaky bottom, is if we do not hold in mind what the teacher is saying. It is important that we pay attention and we hold in mind so that at the end of the teaching we have something to work with. So the first thing is to pay attention, and the second one is to hold in mind and remember, and the last fault, or the not having the fault of being like a dirty vessel, this this is so that we have a pure motivation. We have a pure motivation for listening to the Dharma, so the motivation is not negative, like of thinking only about this life for money and fame, etc. So if we listen to the Dharma and with a faulty motivation, then the listening to the Dharma itself becomes negative. So therefore we need to have a pure motivation, which is not like a dirty vessel. So Rinpoche would like to share a story that is related to this. A few years ago, a teaching was organized in one of the monasteries in the south of India, and usually when there is a big gathering, so sponsors are being searched for. So there were two sponsors. One was a geshe and one was a Western monk. And usually when there's such sponsors to these teachings, one of the things which they do is to offer a representation of the body, speech and mind, what you saw at the beginning of the course, which are just like offerings for the teacher who is going to teach. So during the offering of the mandala, the body, speech and mind, the geshe stood first, and then the Western monk stood behind him. And suddenly, during offering the mandala, the Western monk came and stood before the geshe and said, hey, let's look at the situation. I gave more money, so therefore I should stand first. So this is an example of not having a motivation which is impure. So the monk, he had no doubt that this is what he should do. He spoke to Rinpoche afterwards, and through his conversation, through his speak, I understood that he had nothing wrong. Of course I needed to be first because I paid more. So Rinpoche didn't put him into place. If you're bored with what I'm saying, I say these things to wake you up a bit. So having abandoned the three folds of a vessel in order to set a correct motivation, following that we should have the six favorable considerations, the proper way to listen to the teachings. What are these considerations? The first one is thinking of oneself as a sick person. The second one is thinking of the Dharma expounder as a teacher. This is the teacher, he is like a doctor. The third one is thinking of the instructions as a medicine. The fourth one is thinking of earnest practice as the way to cure your disease. The fifth one is the attitude that the Tathagata is an excellent being. And the sixth one is thinking that the teachings will remain a long time. So these are the six favorable considerations which we should have as a proper motivation while listening to the Dharma teachings.
לאורך זמן ארוך.
So we said that the first consideration, the first attitude, is thinking of oneself as a sick person, as though we have a sickness. The sickness which we're talking about is the sickness of having the mental afflictions, the attachment, the aversion, and the ignorance. These afflictions have controlled our mind since beginningless time, and all the rebirths, the beginningless rebirths that we have taken, have all been controlled by these three afflictions. And we have experienced them so many times before this suffering, and we're still experiencing it. It's beginningless and endless. We are always experiencing them. Our mind is completely controlled by these afflictions, and they bring us so much suffering, which is measureless. When we look at our current situation, we recognize the state of suffering, the suffering which is like a sickness which is caused by the three afflictions, and we aspire to be free from them. This is a liberation which will bring us happiness or some relaxation, complete liberation from this suffering. It is like a chronic disease, these afflictions. So first we need to have the attitude of realizing that oneself is like a sick person.
아주에 아주 되게 생규 아니 딱 그게 레버치 누가 레버치 줄 탑이니 딱 답에 줄 넣을 수 있는 디마도 다 시행 가야 되는 다 뒤에 자리가 누가 줄 넣을 수 있는 디마도 다 뒤에 하고 시행 가야 되는 제가 줄 쉐버서 마셔고 줄 넣는 무슨보다 넣을 수 있는 게 있냐 누가
The second attitude which we should practice is thinking of the Dharma expounder as a teacher, thinking that the Dharma, the teacher, is like a doctor, and thinking that this by relying on the teacher, this is the only way to be free from the three afflictions which cause us suffering, which are our sickness. So the only way to recover from our sickness is by practicing the Dharma. And the Dharma is what we listen to from our Dharma teacher. The third consideration which we should have is thinking of the instructions as medicine. Like we said, our mental state is afflicted by the attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And the way to recover from this sickness, the way to recover from this chronic disease, which we have had since beginningless time. So the only way to recover from this sickness is by the Dharma. Nothing else can help us. This is the only way to be liberated. So in this way, the Dharma for us is like our refuge. The refuge which we are seeking is the Dharma. Only the Dharma can give us the refuge. It is the cure for our disease. So the consideration of seeing the teacher like the doctor, the Dharma teacher as a doctor, our spiritual teacher teaches us in a pure view, in a pure way, everything that we need to know in order to practice the Dharma properly to attain enlightenment eventually. So the teacher teaches in a correct way, and this is what will bring us to complete recovery from our sickness. So thinking about medicine and the sick person. So let's say if we have lots of medicine in front of the sick person, still the sick person will not know which medicine to take and at what time to take this medicine, morning or noon or evening. So the sick person himself will not know how to cure himself, even having the medicine is all in front of him. So, therefore, like the sick person who needs the guidance from the doctor, also as Dharma practitioners, we also need the spiritual teacher to guide us in a pure way with the Dharma according to our individual and specific needs. So in this way, the Lama is just like a doctor. Since the Buddha is the one who taught the Dharma from his great kindness, he's the one who taught the Dharma first in this world, so then we have the attitude of seeing the Buddha as an excellent being. This is the fifth consideration. We not only recognize that the Dharma can benefit ourselves, but also to bring benefit to all sentient beings who wander in the cycles of existence. And since it can be of immense benefit to everyone, then we develop the consideration, the attitude that the Dharma will remain for a long, long time.
근데 중토가 있나? 아니 지금에 레벨인데 아니 뭐 시중 아니 심비 이게 지상 소지 아니 저 가요가 오늘 지금 가시고 있다 오늘 전에 또 미국지 그렇고 다시 오늘 이 가버는 장 무슨 중요한 이 진주 주제 속에 대시시로 지금 그렇게 무슨 처음으로 맞아요. 그러니까 내가 시작했으니까 아니냐 말아도 찍어냈어. 정말 지금에 이모가 시험 수업에 아니 지금에 어떻게 보시면 뭐가 아니 이제 이게 다 가진 대배용 체외다 기진 자는 수로 아니 수업으로 하시는 거야. 정말 아니 냐오가 뭐야 말 냐의 신다 아니 우리 이제 그렇지 유여와 나구와 사람이 좀 되지만 이 규칙에 가서 뭐냐라고 해서 아니 이 프랑키 프랑이야 사람이 좀 되지만 규칙을 냐올 통해서 아니 냐올 한이 공식한 거로 그 도구간에 또 인지 총 있어요. 인지 총이 더 있고 아네, 프랑키 미셔가지 누구시 프랑스 인지에 공이 있어요. 프랑스 여신들 텐데다. 이네 미셔가지 이게 다 누구간에 또 인지 총이 총다고. 이 내가 내지요. 이 프랑 사기 그 인지 총에서 사기 오리야 그거시요스. 그거시는 항상 내가 타체. 아니我的年纪清楚是重要合作的事。年纪为这个说是这个产品，电信产品做起来，他的这个态度，从去给国方都也很重要吧。这个电咱们三级中间的国安人员啊，几件事都是，对对，年纪这个人类，这个当必须我们是民众其中的甚至其上的放弃，这个我们都是重要的事情。문제 기후탑에 내년 진주 말하는 주제 주제야 다 미국 대신 지수는 그랬어. 그래서 이 기사니까 주얼이 무슨 말하다 보면 아니 미국에 기기 줄어서 이제 이게 사업을 계속 잘 이루었어.
그렇게 하자는 것은 예시다 하시고 지금 컬
So first of all, we need to make sure that our motivation is correct and it is pure. We could listen to the teachings and have and gain knowledge, and we can recite all these lists. We might be able to recite verses and lists from within the teachings and say them correctly in detail, but this will not be of any benefit for us to train our mind. It will not be of benefit to us so we can cure our disease of the afflictions. In order to get rid of our afflictions, we need initially to recognize our situation of being controlled by the three afflictions. We need to wish to stop this control, to eradicate the afflictions. So this motivation of having the considerations of first seeing that we're a sick person, and then and also the three faults of the not having the three faults of the vessel and having the six considerations. This is what the Buddha Shakyamuni himself taught, and it's not only he taught it, but Buddha himself generated these attitudes, and also all the previous Buddhas, they trained their mind with these motivations. There is a story that Rinpoche told about the Buddha, is the way that the Buddha generated compassion at the beginning of his way. is that he was in one of his lifetimes he was born in hell, and in order to achieve enlightenment, one needs to get all the how to say great accumulations, to have the great accumulation of merit over three great eons. So it is important to generate bodhicitta, and it takes 3 great eons to do so. So there is a story that speaks about the Buddha who was born just like us. He was ordinary. He had a mind which was afflicted with the 3 afflictions, and at the beginning of his way to enlightenment, he went through the different realms, and when he was born in realm, there are all kinds of descriptions of the different sufferings in hell. And the Buddha was leading like a cart or a great weight on his back, and there was someone else that was also leading the great weight on his back, and there were the workers of hell were beating the other people who were in his same situation of suffering. And when these hell workers were beating one of the people, this person died, and the Buddha generated immense compassion for this person who was beaten. Buddha was beaten, and he died, and then he was taken out of hell and was born in the higher realms due to his great compassion. So what Rinpoche wants to show us is that our motivation is so important. The Buddha and all the previous Buddhas and the great teachers, they began in exactly same state as us. And the way to transform the ordinary state is by generating compassion. This leads us to the beginning of the text of the foundation of our good qualities, which was composed by the great Kybje Ling Khapa. So since Kybje Ling Khapa is giving a commentary here on the gradual stages of enlightenment, so we should look at the characteristics of this tradition which teaches the Lamrim. One of the characteristics of this tradition focuses on the fact that the tradition has composes all the important points from the sutra and the tantra in a gradual way. So this is the first characteristic. The second characteristic is that this explanation composes all the points of the two main teachers. After the Buddha taught in India, there were two kind of founders of Asanga and Nagarjuna. So Asanga's tradition has essential points of Asanga and Nagarjuna. So this is the second characteristic of the Lama Rim. And the third one is that this tradition is aimed for the ones who wish for liberation and enlightenment.
다 기도 하나만 되봐. 그봐. 어디 지금 다들 주시고야지. 아니 지난 지 말아도 쉬어 가리니까 거의 신대신보다 아니 더 산재 중국 하나도 빼나시. 이 동호회 계속 쉬차려요. 이 마지막에 최대리야 공부 농맹의 시원이 다 최대 공부하지 마지막에 내가 최선을 다 저들이 이게 뭐야? 남아가는 나라이들. 뭐야? 아니 지금에 이단 하이 시스도 남아가는 나라이들. 아니 양도 또 산지는 저러는 거다. 뭐 방식이 그거. 근데 싶어요. 되게 좀 처리요. 심하죠? 최 중국 강도 빼는 신축 공부 시간 거야. 그래서 나도 직사에는 엄마도 지금에 브랜드지 메탈로 여러 개나 싶고 이게 가서 오래 이게지네고 유니버시티 내에서 그거 알지 세대지면 안 손에 빠지지네고 소미도 갈 뜻다고 뒤졌다 뒤서차도 세 빠지고 이대 영화로 여기 이메지 그것도 야구 예배에서 좀 돌아가야 돼 그것도 공부하려 때문에 그게 아니고 영어로 근데 뒤졌다
So as we said, this tradition is of the Lama Rim, the graduated paths of enlightenment, is not meant for different beings, but rather for one individual practitioner who goes through the different stages until enlightenment. So therefore this tradition is like supreme and considered very important. So one thing that is stressed in this tradition is the lineage, the importance of the lineage, to show that the teachings have come from an accurate source, a qualified source. If we get teachings from someone who does not follow a particular lineage, then we do not know that whether the teachings we receive are authentic or not. So therefore, we want to make sure that our lineage is such which is complete, exact, true, which is unbroken, which leads all the way back to the Buddha Shakyamuni himself. If someone has come to a particular development in their practice, and they could become a yidam deity, and if he got these direct teachings from the yidam, so then there is also an unbroken lineage in receiving these teachings. So it is important to make sure that the teachings have come in an unbroken lineage, just like anything else. If we look in life, if we want to buy some food, let's say, some product, we want to make sure that it's the correct company that has produced this food. We want to see that whether it is Nestle or some other well-known company. If we look at a course in university, then we want to make sure that the teacher is qualified. We want to know where he has studied, in what university, has he completed their studies. If we want to buy a new camera or any gadget, we want to make sure that the company which produces this gadget creates good, let's say, good cameras. But even if the photos come out nice, but the company is not good, probably the camera will get ruined quickly. So we can look at these examples to know that also in the Dharma we want to make sure that the lineage of the teachings is unbroken and qualified. So, since we're going to study this text, which was written by Lama Tzong Khapa, we also have like an outline. So we're going to have like four general outlines for this text that we're going to go through. The first one speaks about the life story of the one who the text has come from, to show that it's a correct source, an authoritative source. So this is the first outline, and it shows all the qualities of the teacher so that we generate respect for the Dharma. This was the second one, and the third one shows us how to teach and how to listen to the teachings, and the fourth one shows how to train our mind on the way to enlightenment. So the first outline, which stresses the source, the authoritative source of these teachings, presents not only the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, but in particular, Atisha took took the essence of all the 84,000 teachings by the Dharma, by the Buddha, and he shows and he wrote the lamp of the path to enlightenment. And within this text, there's the explanations like Maitreya showed in the ornament for clear realization. So all these instructions are concise within the text, and the text which we're going to study now is based on the lamp of the path to enlightenment. So the first outline shows that the source is correct, and we spoke about it shortly, which is Lama Tzong Khapa actually explains it in quite a detailed way. The second outline shows the qualities of the gradual stages of enlightenment. So we're speaking about 4 characteristics of the Lamrim, and these 4 characteristics can be spoken about as the 4 greatnesses actually of the Lamrim. And the first one is that which sees which there are no contradictions between the different teachings which are taught. There are no contradictions at all. The second greatness of this tradition of the Lamrim is that which shows us whatever the Buddha taught. All these teachings are personal instructions for our own practice. And the third greatness of these teachings is that which shows us, that helps us to see in a very easy way the meaning, the intention of the Buddha. And the fourth greatness is that which allows us to refrain from extreme negative actions.
כשמסתכלים על הגדולות האלה שמתארות את המאפיינים
These 4 greatnesses of the Lamrim teachings, the first characteristic, the first greatness helps us to see that the teachings of the Buddha are free from any contradictions. And the Buddha taught many, many teachings, and all of them are aimed to apply the antidotes for the afflictions within the mind of the practitioner.
굉장히 그게 바로 탐지기인데 굉장히 상가 지중 뭐 이게 그렇 아니 예 되나가 되는데 그게 나대나 저서 사기 때문에 이렇게 마시고 그런데 이게 송당하고 판이하고 내가 수수지 그게 되게 송당하고 그거 담아띠네 다 사기 공원 주변에 사기 전에 상황으로 담아 잘 그거 담아 전에 담아 잘 전에 되게 상황 아주 구시구시치 그거 있었고요. 근데 이제 또 소나만 담아 쳐서 됐었어요. 이제 중원이나 아니 제가 뭔가 대화가 또 모르겠어. 아니 저거는 내는 사고 말했어. 제일 아주 저거는 했으면 그때 이제 시기로 아니 그게 저거는 내가 사실 쉽지 저거 가서 이제 단지 이슈에 시도를 내냐 저거는 내기 아니 그거에 사치를 쓰는 그것이 대화도 이게 그 소라만 담아서 차트가 아니 내가 보면 내가 또 이나 저거는 내가 가지고 있어.
The second greatness of the Lamrim is that which helps us to see that everything which the Buddha taught is like personal instructions for our Dharma practice. There are many different traditions of practice in the world and different religions. So we can say that despite the fact that there are differences between the different religions and the traditions, they're actually the principal aspects of the same. So it's not. So we can see the differences within the religions, but also within the Buddhism itself. There are different attitudes. There are different traditions. There's different understandings of selflessness and of emptiness in Buddhism. In general, the non-Buddhist ways of thinking, they would think that things truly abide, they truly exist, but Buddhism refutes that. But when looking even in a more detailed way on ways of thought which are within Buddhism, like Vatiputriya, and this way of thinking that it's
sufficient, substantially existent.
Okay, so they adhere to a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. So they believe that the self truly exists and has got a truly abiding form. So also in Buddhism, there are some differences in the different tenets and different way of thinking. Also within the Tibetan Buddhism, there are different traditions of the Kagyu, the Sakya, the Nyingma, and they all use different terms and different perspectives for explaining. But finally, fundamentally, we're all dealing with the teachings of the Buddha and the greatness of all these teachings. Presents the fact that all these traditions are finally they're all like personal instructions. They're given like oral instructions for our own individual practice. And this is the third greatness of the Lamrim, which is to find easily and simply the meaning of the Buddha. If we can do that, then we can also see the fourth greatness of the Lamrim, and that is to refrain from extreme negative actions. And the worst negative action which is meant in this context is abandoning the Dharma. which is saying, which is something which is taught by the Buddha, is actually not true. It is said that this negative action is even worse than harming this whole world. So in this way we can see that the Dharma teachings are oral instructions, personal instructions, which are given to us, and in this way we can refrain from these extreme negative action of abandoning the Dharma. So the time is up.